My name is Frater and I've always experienced life a little different than most. The veil between the spiritual and physical planes have always been thinner for me than that of your average person. Since a child, I've had the gift to see, talk, and experience the presence of spirits and ghosts. I've used this ability to give voice to those that have passed and no longer are heard or seen by the masses. With my good friend and partner Daniel James, we will shed light onto so many topics and do our part to bring to the surface what often is hidden. My name is Frater and I've always experienced life a little different than most. The veil between the spiritual and physical planes have always been thinner for me than that of your average person. Since a child, I've had the gift to see, talk, and experience the presence of spirits and ghosts. I've used this ability to give voice to those that have passed and no longer are heard or seen by the masses. With my good friend and partner Daniel James, we will shed light onto so many topics and do our part to bring to the surface what often is hidden in darkness.
My name is Daniel James. As early as I have memories, I have had sightings of UFOs, shadow people, beings from other realities, sleep paralysis, and a call to the unknown. My interests in the paranormal has led me into producing films, documentaries, and web series about all of the mysteries that I chase. Now, my journey has led me here. To share these stories with my partner Garrett, and with you.
Real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to Season 4, Episode 2 of the hit underground paranormal radio show known as Celestial Oddities, the Pong, PairOfNormal Guys podcast. I am your host, Frater.
And I am your co-host, Daniel James.
Now, if you're listening out there on the radio portion rather than the video, and you heard half of that intro and then it started again, I apologize for that technical difficulty. For some reason, the video didn't kick on, even though it said it did. For those of you watching video-wise, you wouldn't have known the difference until I just said it, but I wanted to make sure we cleared that up for anybody out there listening and says, why the hell did that happen? That is what happened. There's always fun glitches and technical difficulties that seem to happen with this show. I don't know why. We are glad to be back for Season 4, Episode 2. If you missed last week or 2 weeks ago, our last episode, our premiere of Season 4, we deep dive into the Russian sleep experiment, what that is, what it's like to break the human psyche and, explore the inner caverns of self and what that can bring out of a human being. So if you missed that, certainly jump back and check that out. Daniel and I had a great time, jumping into that. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're tuning in from, whether it be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Google, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, we're on it. Listen where you like, but by clicking those buttons, it moves us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives, not only of this show, but our other radio shows as well, like Knights of the Nephilim and Uncovering the Underground. Now, if you are listening out there and you are not aware, and something that might be changing, I'm still yet to decide. We do have a video portion now. So for years, we've only been audio. So you've been listening through iTunes, Spotify, and the like. Well, we do have the Instagram Live, Facebook Live, and the YouTube that you can come and listen and watch at the same time. There is a chat feature where you can tune in and leave comments. There's already comments coming in as we speak, and we'll drop those on the screen. If you guys have questions for us, we will answer them. We'll have features where people can actually jump in and talk with us, live phone calls, live chats where someone can jump on the screen with us and give their input, and then we can send them on their way so we can hear from them. So it'll be really nice to be able to do that. My subscription for my radio platform for the audio comes due in about 2 weeks, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I keep the audio or only keep it Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So if I, for some reason, decide to get rid of that portion for all my shows, including Daniel and I's show here, and you don't hear us all of a sudden on Spotify and you're like, where are these new episodes at? Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I haven't made that decision yet. It's costly. I'm paying for both platforms. It just depends on what makes sense or not. I know a lot of you are now watching the video side, but there are still some that are tuning in on the audio. So we'll figure that out, and we'll let you know as soon as we can, but I wanted to give a forewarning on that. So, Daniel, tonight we have a fun one. We get to talk about governmental false red flags and releasing of information, and maybe why information's suppressed, maybe why information's given, but maybe given in a way that seems like we're getting, to the bare bones of the matter, but really could just be a deviation leading us in the opposite direction of what's really taking place. I think this will be a really good and really fun one.
That's right. Yeah, this is a topic that I've covered personally on my own YouTube channel and my own teachings and my other podcasts, like several times over the last 4 or 5 years. This is something we need to talk about so that people know what's happening, to our civilization. And
absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said. I mean, in general, the conversation, could be taken a lot of different ways. One of the things I want to heavily focus on tonight is the fact that recently we've been given a trial where the government released documentation of aliens being real and, something people have been waiting for forever. Oh, my God, we're getting this information of UFOs and aliens and UAPs and all of this information. But when we jump right into the bare bones of it, the trial was heavily lacking. And I'm popping your comments up here, folks, as they're coming in. I have a chance to read them here in a couple minutes. But there was 3 specific people that were brought as witnesses, as experts, as testimonials. That were all 3 well-known UFO individuals. Now, these 3 have spoken heavily about UFOs in the past several years, and they brought them forth on this trial where you'd be expecting to hear some unknown information. And all they did was pretty much tell the same stories that they've been telling for years. There was no new information given.
That's right.
And when they ask any real gritty questions to the one individual, and I can't remember all their names off the top of my head,
But I know the one they would ask anything of substance to the one, he would just say, I can't comment on that publicly at this time.
Of course.
But that's interesting because, like, this was the public hearing to release the information to really shock the world. They said the same thing that they've been saying forever. Nothing was shocking, really, in them stories. And when they did ask any deep questions, which was rare, they didn't really ask anything of value. The answer was, I can't comment at this time publicly. I'm not allowed to speak on that. And what was interesting is the claims made by these three individuals, for the most part, were secondhand accounts. Oh, yeah, I got from other government officials that I work with or that I know that they seen this, that they experienced this, that there was a group of military individuals that had this happen to them. But if you noticed, it was mostly, I know someone who had this happen. I talked to someone who's seen this. Well, why are we doing this huge trial, this huge release of governmental information that's supposed to shock the world, and we're hearing the same stories? We're not getting any new information because it's being suppressed. And the people that we're talking to or hearing from are ones that didn't even experience this phenomena themselves. It's secondhand accounts. Where are the folks that they heard it from? Where are their sources? Why weren't they brought in to talk? So I know a lot of people were very, very excited about the release of this information. But then once a lot of us heard it, we're like, oh, well, that doesn't surprise me. It brings me to the point, was all of this kind of a play? Was this something structured and built to be this huge release that some people are still shocked because they're like, the government did actually agree that there's aliens, but they didn't really say anything. They didn't show any bodies. They didn't bring anything out of the courtroom and say, here is a physical, body or physical UFO vessel. Nothing. If anything, it was pictures and videos that are subjective. So, I mean, what are your thoughts, Dan? There's a lot I still have to say on this, but I would love to get your thoughts on what do you think about the recent trial and release of info?
Yeah, I'm going to pop off and just stop me whenever I've gone too far. You need to add something because, I mean, there's really no end to what I have to say about this topic. Like I said, I've covered it myself for 5 years, okay? What you guys are witnessing on mainstream media, any information that reaches civilian level awareness is agenda-based, controlled, sort of limiting perspectives on things that they want to completely control the truth and validity of, so that they have the total grip and angle on the way it's depicted and how much of the truth and how much of what is a lie and that they can skew is given to civilians, us, the surface population that is outside of the controller's awareness. So in the intro clip of our video, I added a shot of what was released a couple of years ago now, was a black and white military shot where there was like a jet fucking chasing some UFO, and the guy, there's audio to it in the real clip. You can Google search it, where this was released on like every news station. Every news station covered this, where it's like a military jet has footage of this UFO and he tracks it with like their little sonar thing and locks onto this object moving really fast. And the guy's like, oh my God, I can't fucking believe how fast it's moving. And this played on every single news station. And now just recently, I think it was this last week, they have like some uncovered small little alien creature. Frater, I don't know if you saw the pictures and the videos of this. And it's basically like this small little humanoid Zeta archetype, which there are like hundreds and hundreds of Zeta archetypes. And nobody knows like what it is, where it's from, but it when anything reaches mainstream media, I'm talking the news, I'm talking Google headlines, anything that reaches the mass consensus, civilian awareness, which is us, you have to look at it. You have to discern that very carefully and see what they're saying, why it's being released, how it's being discussed, because I'm going to tell you right now, those little statuesque creatures that they showed on TV are not real aliens. I'm sorry. They just don't exist. Those are fabrications that they can continue every couple months, maybe every year. They have a big extraterrestrial alien spotlight that reaches the news. And I'm talking to you, the news, mainstream media, and any article online that reaches Google, because Google heavily suppresses the truth. Anything that reaches those platforms is heavily agenda-based. So what I believe happening, like if anybody's ever heard of like Project Bluebeam, people are familiar with the secret space program. If you know me and what I do, I work for an ET contact group. Look up Cosmic Agency on YouTube. Some of the best information that you'll ever find about the truth about the existence of extraterrestrials and extra-dimensional beings. But this information is being controlled and released to us in a slow drip. Okay. Truthers out there and people who are like free thinkers are all excited because they're like, oh, they're finally telling us that aliens exist. This is huge. This is so exciting. But no, they're actually controlling the release of the information about them because aliens have always existed. Extraterrestrials exist. There is a countless infinite number of aliens that exist on other planets. There are what's called as breakaway civilizations of ET races, and Earth-based planetary races that exist inside our inner Earth, which Frater and I have talked about in previous episodes. Aliens, extraterrestrials are everywhere. Okay, we are extraterrestrial. Not only do we have them on our planet, but they're all over. It's just that humans aren't publicly interstellar. There's a reason behind that too. And if our controllers or the government or the cabal or whatever people want to call the secret societies that control our planet were to actually let the truth about aliens exist come out and reach the public, it would break and shatter a lot of structures, a lot of systems, a lot of paradigms that control the mind, that limit our thinking, that limit our belief structures. It totally abolishes religion. It abolishes evolution. A lot of our history would be rewritten. So there's a lot of reasons why our controllers don't want the truth about aliens coming out. Now, number two, this is the second big point I want to make, and I'll stop ranting because clearly I'm fired up. The second point, and my internet's working tonight.
It is.
So we're going to fucking make the most of it. Yeah. So the second big point I want to make is, yes, aliens exist. Yes, they are talking about it on mainstream mass consensus sort of platforms. But you look at the pandemic from 2020. You look at the Ukraine war. You look at all these really big things that are happening. So the third wave of these really big things that affect the whole planet, not just a single country, but everybody's involved to some degree, would be the existence of aliens. So that would it's something that would affect everybody in really, really life-altering ways. So what do you do if there are positive, peaceful, loving extraterrestrials that want to help planet Earth? Okay, we'll call them the good guys, the good cops. And then there are bad cops, the regressive, malevolent, negative ones that want to control humans and use them for something. Well, then there are basically two faction types that are at war with each other over the evolution and the ascension and the consciousness of Earth, of humans, for a specific reason. Well, the regressive ones are the only ones who are going to literally intervene and break a law. There's a space law that's called the Prime Directive. That means, make no contact, don't let your awareness, don't let your existence know, don't interfere technologically or spiritually to any planetary race that is not at your equal level of technology and consciousness, because you can be interfering with them, you can limit their growth. Being involved in certain ways can be destructive to ET races. So this Prime Directive law, it protects planets like us. It protects humans. So you don't see positive races really making that much intervention or making their presence known or doing a lot of things because they literally can't. Okay? But then you've got regressive races that will. So I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but the second point I wanted to make was that aliens always have existed on Earth and outside of Earth. And the reason why we don't know that is because they're already here. And the regressive malevolent ones are the ones who are controlling our media. They're controlling our politics. They're controlling our religion. They're controlling our healthcare. They're controlling our warfare. They're controlling our evolution as a species. And if they can keep us small and they can keep us limited, and they can keep us afraid of the existence of aliens, why do you think movies, more often than not, 80% of Hollywood films depict aliens, extraterrestrials, in a negative, fear-based way? They're blowing us up. They're fucking lasering us. They're probing us. They're abducting us and doing terrible things. They're invading and terraforming. Those things happen. They do happen, but sometimes a regressive race will take over a planet quietly, and they'll do it through the mind. and they'll do it through psychology, and they'll do it through the media, not in like a military hostile takeover, but it can be done psychologically. And so if they want to control a race, then what they need to do is they need to control how positive and all extraterrestrials are depicted. If they can control that narrative, and you take an agenda and you say, okay, we control the media, we control the people because we control their perception, we control their awareness, we control what they're consuming, we control what they think about, what they look at on TV. Then we can tell them that aliens are bad. Aliens are scary. They're going to blow you up. They're going to invade you and take over your planet. So then we fear them. And we don't want to ever even consider that they really exist because we would be afraid to find out that they're amongst us already and that there are other races, watching and perceiving Earth, because we know that they're technologically advanced, they're spiritually advanced, they're medically advanced. We would never be able to stop a hostile takeover. So let's just pretend they don't exist. Let's leave them in the fantasy realm. And whatever the news says, that's how much we can consider is real. So let's say they want to agendify the existence of aliens so that we fear them, and they can basically set up a fake alien invasion with fake extraterrestrials that probably don't even really exist, but create a fake race that we would be all very afraid of. And the first way you're going to do that to a population that has been told that aliens don't exist now and that Earth is the only fucking planet in the world that has intelligent life, let's then slowly tell our civilians that aliens exist by showing them these little dolls, these little dummies, these little fake, props that somebody probably made in a Hollywood studio. Let's show them these black and white military graphics of a jet chasing a UFO over the ocean. Let's show them small little things that get them thinking, but they'll only ever believe as much as we tell them. So we're going to make sure that we give it to them a little bit at a time in a way that they can absorb, that's palatable, that won't scare them too much. And then little by little, as we disclose the existence of aliens by controlling what we show them and controlling how we angle their presence, we can start to say, okay, there is this ET race. They have ships. They've been communicating with our government behind the scenes, which our governments are literally just fucking actors and spokesmen and puppets for, the real controllers that nobody even knows exist. Then we'll slowly start saying, okay, well, there's this ET race that is a technological, militarily superpower. And now we're all afraid of them. So what I believe is going to happen, and then I'm going to take it back over to you, as I think they're setting up a fake alien invasion where the aliens that are going to be made public someday, probably in our lifetime, are going to come in peace. And they're going to come and they're going to establish themselves as an authority figure, technologically, spiritually, medically advanced. They might offer to help us in a lot of ways because our planet's polluted and there are fires everywhere and we have all of these viruses and diseases that we can't seem to get a grip on. So they might offer to help us in some way. They might say, here's some technology for transportation. Here's some medical technology. Here are some things you can do to improve, the food you eat and nature and this, that, and the third. And then they'll start to impose these things little by little as being mandates, as being laws, as being requirements. And then you're going to slowly witness like this takeover where little by little, it'll be like this totalitarian tiptoe into like our society as humans and civilization as you know it will look like a fucking sci-fi movie, like a dystopian horror film, because all of these changes that have been made by this ET race that is a superpower that we should basically look up to, like deities, like gods from the sky, which they're not, then civilization of Earth is now subservient to this fake ET race. This is probably just our own government and probably just our own malevolent ET races that already exist here on planet Earth that are behind our controllers now. That's what I think is happening, is we're witnessing a fake disclosure of the presence of aliens that has always been here, and they're going to angle it in their favor so that when they introduce aliens, whether they're fake or whether they're a real race that's regressive and malevolent and is working with our government, okay, it's going to have negative implications on us as humans because positive races never break the prime directive. That's it.
I mean, a couple things I'll add to that. I'll piggyback off of your thoughts here, and then I'll provide my own, which are actually vastly different in this case. But, if we go off of that narrative, what I would say is, I think that a lot of people are misled because a massive majority of the sightings of UAPs and UFOs are our own governmental vehicles. They are spacecraft built by our government. They are flown over populated areas at specific calculated times and places to be seen, to be videoed, to be put on social media, to make this narrative of aliens are here more and more and more, and we're seeing them more and more, whether it's because now more people have cameras in their pocket, some people believe that, or it's because they're providing more of a presence. 90%, and I'm making up that number, folks, but stick with me, 90% of what you see is not actually alien beings. It's our own governments flying these vessels above us to spark this in our mind, spark this talk about aliens. Then it builds up this need that we want the truth. We need the truth on aliens. You guys have been suppressing it for too long, because at one point, people who spoke out with real good evidence disappeared. Well, now we live in an age where there's all these alien sightings, and the government then gives it to us. So it went from them suppressing the information to openly providing it. Now, to most people with this trial,
and it's like,
the bare basics suffices, because even though you might say, well, shit, I was expecting more than that, 10 years from now, you say, well, yeah, 10 years ago, the government already announced that the aliens are real. So we don't have to argue, are they real anymore? We don't have to have all these conversations. They might not have given us, bodies or anything, but they admitted they're real, and that's good enough for me, and we're good. Most of the sheep will just fall in line, and that's okay. And that provides the narrative, as you said, whether it's to lead us to a utopian society under false doctrine of these beings that aren't real, that are our own people controlling us, or it is alien beings who are here helping control the governments that are leading us to believe in whether real or false races. I do believe
very viable.
Yeah, and I believe that a lot of those sightings definitely are scripted. I don't believe all of them. I believe a lot of them. Now, where that gets a little tricky is I think there could be something completely different at work here, though, and I would like to kind of present that, because during the trial, one thing that was very interesting during this massive release of UFO information, when they ask everybody these witnesses, these three specialists, what got you into ufology, what got you into studying aliens and this and that, they all said that the 2017 New York Times article that supposedly blew the roof off of everybody at that point, that New York Times put this article out that talked about the fact that governments know that aliens are real, that there's all this information, that there's a whole program of the U.S. government dedicated to alien research. They gave the name of ATIP. ATIP, if you don't know, folks, I would start looking into this. This is a big rabbit hole here. You start looking into ATIP. ATIP is a governmental recognized program that was devised for studying the upcoming advanced technologies of enemy aircraft. Now, it never presented as aliens. It was a government subsidiary that was started to watch the enemy, whoever the enemy is, watch the enemy for advanced aerial technology and advances. Now, obviously, that's a good way of guising alien research.
Sure. They
gave them $22 million to start out, this ATIP, and this got blown out in 2017 in an article from the New York Times. But what comes to light years later is through people like John Greenwald, who runs a site called Black Vault. If you go to Black Vault, there's millions, folks, of pages of declassified governmental documents. This guy dedicated his life to picking apart things that are presented, such as this New York Times release, that 97% of what they released in the New York Times as being this huge bombshell, oh my God, the governments know about aliens, is false. It's not true. ATIP does exist, but ATIP is just an acronym and a nickname for a bigger thing going on. ATIP stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, it actually is the nickname for a program I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I just lost it for some reason. OSAP. OSAP is a program that is very interesting, or a governmental agency, and they originally did not talk about who the original founder was and the person is the director. Then all of a sudden, this name comes out of, I had to write it down, Luis Elizondo. He's all over the news, folks. If you look up Luis Elizondo, he's been on news, he's been on radio shows talking about how he was the director of ATIP, how he had all this stuff to do with aliens and research for the government. The thing is, that's not true. He did work for the Pentagon and he did work for the government, but there's no indication he was ever part of any of these programs. Not the true OSAP, not the ATIP. They said that he formed his own thing that he called ATIP. He was a Pentagon employee, but he was never funded, never did anything to help ufology or any of this research that was going on. He was kind of a guy that knew about things and then used the name to make himself famous, and that's what's being said. I'm just saying what I've learned. Now,
Sure.
OSAP is interesting, Dan. OSAP, if you looked into it and if you haven't, I think it's the cover-up for much, much bigger things going on here. So ufology and UFOs is the tip of the iceberg, and that's what they're willing to present us. When you start to dig deeper and deeper into this program was enacted to study supernatural and paranormal phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch. Like the X-Files, but specifically correlated and associated with all of the happenings that we know of or don't know of at Skinwalker Ranch. They were investigating werewolves and dogmen. It was a huge part of their research for this. And this
Which really exists.
Yeah, and this was in governmental classified documents that their purpose for this OSAP was to research werewolf dogmen beings that were being spotted and encountered. That it was to research poltergeist and apparitions that were being seen. It was to research aliens and UFOs, sure, but it was also to research shadow beings, black-eyed children, and dinosaur beavers. Is in the fucking document. I don't know. Beings that looked like beavers but were lizard-like. And these were all found and seen at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, they didn't want anyone knowing about this, so they guised it under the fact of it being a program to watch enemy aerial advancements, and when it came to light that it was a program for UFOs and aliens, because they didn't want the taxpayer to say, holy shit, you gave $22 million of our money to a program to research dinosaur beavers and werewolves. You got to be shitting me. They didn't even want them to know about the aliens, but if it slipped out about aliens and all the sightings that are being seen because our own government are probably allowing it to be seen, then people might say, well, yeah, I mean, aliens has been a question for years. And why Skinwalker Ranch television shows? Why Skinwalker Ranch documentaries and movies? Why has it become such a popular known thing? Why are they doing trials and releasing all this information? I think that there's something much bigger actually happening in the paranormal world, that they've come across different things that are way beyond our understanding of knowledge, and they're using UFOs and aliens as the guise to put it into all of our consciousness. Now we're all talking about aliens. Now they're showing this thing that everybody's making memes out of, this little being that they found in a pyramid or in the desert or wherever the fuck the story was. They're putting it everywhere and anywhere that you can see, so it becomes so second nature that aliens are real, UFOs are real, we know about them now. The government admits to it, that we don't mind as much when they give them another 50 million, 100 million. Well, you know what? We're okay with that because we want to know what aliens are out there, but they're using that money not for aliens. They don't give a shit about aliens or UFOs. They're using it because other things mentioned in their documents was that they found stargates and that they found wormholes to other dimensions. And at Skinwalker Ranch, beyond what they show you in the television shows, there is doorways to other dimensions, and they're encountering beings of all different kinds of dimensions, and that's what they're spending this money on. So it's just really, really, really interesting because it ties in with the government because Senator Reid's the original one who passed the bill to be allowed to open up back in 2007 this AWOS and this ATIP organization. And two of the huge members of this organization, one of which, Bigelow, Bigelow is a huge campaign contributor to Reed's campaign, but he's also a big UFO guy, big supernatural guy. So the people that are funding the senator are the people who are in charge of a program given by the senator to research aliens. And all these guys are connected. All these guys are connected to Skinwalker Ranch. The only reason we know about Skinwalker Ranch is because behind the scenes, what they're not telling you is there's this big thing going on with several very high-named people, both in government, both in Scientology. One of them being a Scientology guy. Do I have his name down here? Rudolph, last name Rudolph, who was known for Stargates and known for running Project Stargate, where they tried to train psychics to be able to see across the world and have remote viewing.
Remote viewers.
Yeah, exactly, remote viewers. He was one of the proponents of this program when it launched. So they have people who are already known from other governmental agencies, other governmental programs, all of a sudden being brought in all under this AWAS name that was secret, giving an acronym of ATIP as some other organization that's just a nickname of it. So it becomes very interesting to me that I think a big part of this is it could very well be that they're planning on alien attacks or alien help down the road, one or the other, that they're planning for now so that we accept it and it's actually us doing it.
I see that.
But another, like I said, another idea that I have is that by bringing it so openly, the people don't even care anymore. Oh, yeah, they've already admitted to it. So, yeah, the people see it on YouTube or on Facebook and they're posting videos, whatever. We already know. They already admitted to it. No longer is it, why will they not admit it? Now they admit it, so nothing matters. So when we want to throw another 100 million, 200 million into research, we're not going to put up as much of a fight, we're not going to pitch a bitch as much, and we're not going to question as much because, hey, they're doing alien research, when really they're tapping into other dimensions to come into contact with beings much beyond just aliens, or what we would call aliens. They are all aliens, I guess you could say. But I think that is a huge part of it, that at Skinwalker Ranch, beyond the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and TVs, there is truly something going on there. But it's also heavily ran by our government. Our government is using scientists to tap into gateways, just like CERN in the Hadron Collider. They're using science to tap into other dimensions that they probably shouldn't be fucking with.
And it's like I've said on our Super Soldier SSP episode, where our government and our military, they have technology that we don't know about. And that's where you said about the UFOs and the ships come into play. We have what looks like as extraterrestrial craft in our military. They're not used in combat, but they're used for other things, and they might even be interstellar. So I do believe in portals, very much so, and I also believe that there are invisible portals that exist all over our planet, or vortices that don't require technology to access, but they can actually open up, and they're invisible. And people can kind of slip in and out of these portal systems without knowing it. Which might even be like a whole other topic. But so not only do portals exist naturally on our planet, similar to like ley lines, well, you can find portals that are that are above or underneath ley lines. But I absolutely do believe that our military, our government, our secret societies, our controllers, they are using portal systems to communicate to other dimensions, other ET races, and I think that that's probably more common than we would imagine.
Well, and one thing, and I mean, you could call this conspiracy or not, but why do they show us so much in movies? Why is there all these things in Hollywood and entertainment? Because it gears us up to not be. I mean, we're still surprised when it's real. When you hear the boogeyman and then you actually meet him, you're like, holy shit, it's real. But you've already been trained that there's been a boogeyman since the time you were born. So It's a shock, but at the same time, it's like, oh, well, this is just what we've always been told. Hear me out for a second. What is one of the huge TV shows out there? Everybody loves, everybody watches. Hollywood effects are great. It's got a gripping story, but it's telling exactly what I'm saying here. Stranger Things. Stranger Things talks about a portal into the upside down, into another world where beings exist, opened by scientists doing research, by using giant scientific objects and machinery that we don't know anything about, and opening it to these beings. That could just be a great story that's enthralling and it's a Netflix original. or it could be exactly what is happening right now, and they've been giving it to us for the last few years.
I think they tell us what they're doing
they've always been.
Film.
They've always been through television and film. That's why people are like, The Simpsons is predicting the future. They're not predicting the future. They're giving you what they've been planning or what's already going on. So
they're disclosing the truth.
They're disclosing the truth. There's a huge difference between predicting the future, folks, and disclosing the truth. If I tell you something 3 years ago that happens today, you think I'm a fortune teller. But I had already been planning it 5 years ago. So you think I'm giving you 3 years of future. No, I'm giving you 5 years of planning. And I'm just bringing it to fruition, and that's what's happening. And that's what's happening through these different TV shows. It's great Hollywood. It's great. I love Stranger Things. It's great. But it's terrifying because this is actually happening, and we're paying our taxpayers. You know, when we get to talking about taxes, which is bullshit in general, all of us here pay all of this money, billions and billions of dollars, but yet somehow our government is trillions of dollars in debt. So we give them billions and fucking trillions of dollars over the years in our taxpayer money, but yet it doesn't pay for anything, and they still keep going further and further into the hole. But yet somehow all this money that we don't know about is siphoned here and there. Mm-hmm. How many people knew that $22 million was just given to an agency of the government to research fucking dinosaur beavers and werewolves? We didn't know that, and they didn't want us knowing that, and they discontinued it supposedly, I think, in 2012, and then the funding ran out by 2014. But there's still word that this unit's still very much active and still doing their research, and it would only make sense that years later, back in 2007, people didn't really know about Skinwalker Ranch. Daniel and I did because we researched the paranormal. But most people didn't ever hear about that until the television shows came out. Why do you think they would ever allow television shows to come out showing and depicting a place that is one of the most secret places in the world? Because they allowed it to, because they wanted you to know about it. They want you to think about it, dream about it, talk about it, fantasize about it. What's going on there? I want to know. I want to see it. I want to take a trip there. So then when they're saying, well, help us get more money generated, or we're going to use your money to help bring more entertainment to you and more releases of amazing information of shadow beings and black-eyed children, most people are curious and they're saying, well, cool, yeah, you can take my money, because if you're going to tell me that there's black-eyed children, I'm willing to pay about it because I want to see it. But maybe they're giving you the false script of just the bare minimum. Oh, yes, folks, there are aliens, and we're going to tell you the same shit we've been telling you for 5 years, and people eat it up. They don't give you anything new. You know what I mean? Fucking since Roswell, you know, it's been one of the big changes in American history of UFOs, and what's been released since then openly? Not a whole lot, a couple of videos. Yippee. Oh yeah, they do exist now. Nothing of actual value. They can string us along while sucking our money and put it into programs to continue their research into God knows what. But like I said, the main objective, guys, and I'll pass this back to Dan, is not necessarily the Greys or UFOs as you normally think. It's aliens of a different nature, dimensional aliens and spirits, and very much, as it was one of the biggest things mentioned, dogmen and werewolves. They're very, very curious about the dogman, because I think there must be, even beyond what we know, a reason that they want to catch them, probably already have caught some, and they want to test them and figure out their DNA. Seems like they're more interested in that than Yeti or Bigfoot or Sasquatch, any of that. Dogman is one of the biggest things that the government is looking at.
You know, I can't say too much about it right now because I don't want to, spoil things. But my movie that I'm working on is partly and largely about a canine extraterrestrial race. So I can tell you guys right now that there are planets that exist where there are actual werewolves, lycanthrope type beings. Speaking from experience here. Now, I could tell you all about some of these ET races on other planets that are more or less, for lack of a better description, either A, they look very similar to the canines that you would see in Egyptian lore and mythology, or also like you would see in a popular American horror film about werewolves. They actually do exist. Oftentimes when you see mainstream media depicting something like this, I always reference The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, like Middle-earth universe, or you go into like Star Wars. Any of these really big, grand movies and TV shows that are about these fantasy-like characters are just derivative. They're taken from fact. from somewhere where this thing is real, and they repackage it to humans, to civilians, and in a way that's fantasy, so that we never believe that those things truly exist. So with the dogmen, with werewolves, lycanthropes, one thing I'm genuinely interested about is how those creatures got to Earth, and why we do have werewolves and dogmen that do exist, that people have face-to-face encounters with. I have actually seen more convincing video clips of dogmen than I have Sasquatch in my life. And it's a fascinating, in terms of cryptozoology, it's a fascinating cryptid, because I believe that there are planetary creatures that you would call aliens, you would call extraterrestrial, because we don't have a scientific definition for them. They're not in any history books or medical books, but they're actually planetary. So they're not extraterrestrial. They're something else.
Or like we talked about interterrestrial. Interterrestrial.
Yes, in the Earth. That's right, because inside the Earth, you have like hundreds of species we've never heard about. They live in tunnel systems. There's also breakaway civilizations that are like the size of countries inside the Earth that have, like, creatures we've never heard or seen about. But then you also have density pockets inside the Earth where we talk about portal systems. There are 4th and 5th density pockets that you can slip into or get into using technology inside planet Earth, where, for lack of a better description, is sort of geographically somewhere you could locate, but it's in a different frequency band. So there are different races and different civilizations in these alternate frequency bands that are on Earth or inside Earth that are in another density too. So my last point about the dogman and the werewolf type lycanthrope is these creatures really do exist, and there are planets where they're abundant, and the planets where that species is the dominant, like, human type of being there. And some of them look humanoid with canine features. Some of them are mostly canine with some human features, and everything in between. But how they got to Earth, that's something I can't answer for you guys. I don't know the answer to that yet, but I know that we have lycanthropes. I know that we have shapeshifters. I know that we have canine human hybrids on planet Earth, and I can say that because I know they exist on other planets.
Well, I think that, I mean, as one of the things mentioned specifically in this research that I did into this rabbit hole of ATIP and AWAS, one of the big things they mentioned is that at Skinwalker Ranch, on that property, they have discovered, and they're researching into, these Stargate wormholes, that there are there. Like, it wasn't even like we're thinking they're there. It was, no, we are researching Stargate wormholes that we discovered at Skinwalker Ranch, which would make sense that area is so populated with all kinds of phenomena, because the wormhole doesn't open up to just, it's not a hallway, it just leads you to another room. It is an open portal that leads dimensions of multi-facets into this world and out of this world. So all kinds of beings come through, and that's why I think a lot of times, and Daniel and I have talked about this at great length, that I don't think Sasquatch or Dogman is what we think it is. When it comes here, it might be physical. It might be able to scratch you or hurt you. But you don't hear, and you could say it's covered up and sure, but you don't hear of a lot of attacks from Dogman. You don't hear people say, like, I was standing there, we seen it, and it fucking murdered my best friend. You don't see that. It's almost like they're all ghosts. They're all spiritual entities that come here and take on a visible form that we can see and interact with. We have sightings, we get scared, but a lot of times you don't hear about a physical attack. They're not harming us. They seem to disappear, or you see it run behind a tree and then it's gone. How? Because it disappeared back into its frequency, as Daniel and I talked about. That they take on a visual form, and Earth beings can't comprehend things unless they see it. Ghosts are everywhere. It can move a fucking object on your table, but how many people still be like, well, something could have caused that. For us to believe it, we have to see it. We have to see the being doing it, because we're dumb. We're like no better than animals for the most part. So we see a being, we see a shape, we see a manifestation, and then we believe it. So I think these beings do come through, and that's one of the reasons Daniel and I had made the artwork that you see behind us, guys, that is the two dogmen staring at each other, because it's one of the most fascinating beings. I mean, I have a great interest in the dogman or into the werewolf being, because I have met people and talked to people who have had very specific encounters that we've talked about in the past with this being. So it's very interesting. I would love to know what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, truly. I don't give a fuck about the TV shows and the documentaries and movies, because here's the thing, I don't believe it. I believe they're giving us what they want to give us, and most of it's bullshit.
That's right.
Here's I'm going to say something that sounds fucked up, and a lot of people are going to be like, what are you saying? For the longest time, I was a huge proponent of Gaia TV.
Well, in the beginning, sure.
I'm standing behind Gaia thinking that it's a false flag. Gaia TV is feeding us all this enlightened shit that, you'll be able to tap into your DNA, and you'll be able to, and let's tell you the truth about aliens, and all this stuff that is provocative, all this stuff that blows your wig back. But I also think that a lot of that's scripted by the hands of the evil ones that run us. Just like there's a lot of YouTube podcasters out there, guys, who are interviewing amazing guests who are telling you bombshells of information. But the question that someone close to me recently asked, how are they doing so, Crow, without being killed, without being murdered, without disappearing? Do you think maybe they're false? And I said, I have wondered at myself that you have people coming on, we're talking to the ex-director of a special unit of the government who's unveiling all these top secret information. They would never let that be aired and released if they didn't want it aired and released. So if they allow it to be, there's a reason they allow it to be, or it was never true to begin with, and they gave this asshole, this puppet, the script to read. And I think that a lot of the names that we hear, even the shit that I presented to you tonight, the Awis and the A-Tip, that we're like, blows the roof off and it's the wormhole. That's just what they've given us as the secrets. They might not even be the true secrets, but I do believe behind them, somewhere at Skinwalker Ranch and areas similar to that, some places like Mount Shasta, there are some really funky stuff going on that the government knows about, and they are certainly doing experimentation there, and they are interacting with beings. It's not that they're trying to. They have interacted and are interacting with beings of all different natures, and we're paying for it. We're paying for that research.
Absolutely. No, I think you actually are right on point there. I don't have anything oppositional or negative to say about your opinions. I really do agree with you on those points. And one little also note, just a small disclosure, is about the werewolves that we have in our art. It's so appropriate because when Frater had the graphics made for us, I didn't request that particular creature, cryptid, or that image, but it was a cool synchronicity for me. Because, small disclosure, if anyone's ever heard of the concept of star seeds or earth seeds, it's the idea that humans, our consciousness may originate from somewhere else before you're a human incarnation. So it's part of what my movie is about, is when I, spoiled it, that, part of, my ET race are canine hybrids. And so I have a deep affinity to the werewolves, to the lycanthropes, to that particular, what we would call cryptids here, but from my home planet, or from many home planets that have feline races, or insectoid races, or avian races, or aquatic races. The canine energy is what I resonate with most, and it was just a cool synchronicity that's what is basically our graphics and our logo now are our two werewolves, because I'm like, okay, cool, that's just me. that's actually me.
Yep, and that's why I did it that way, is I had it says the two of us facing one another, both as werewolves or as dogmen looking at each other. It's the two of us, and I think it speaks volumes, folks. So, if you have any, and there's a lot of comments come in, Lyra, I see that you've left quite a few, and I tried to pop up the ones that I could read, but while talking, it's also hard to read and pop them up and answer them. I know you had mentioned different things like the ocean. I rest my case. Exactly. We haven't begun to explore the ocean or have any idea of what's down there. And here's the thing. They've shown in movies and things. You go down to the coral reef. What if there was a door that could disengage and open? Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole tunnel system that goes under that. We would never know, because how much of the coral reef do you just pass over and touch? You're not going along the coral reef and feeling every inch of it, and plus the pressure deep down, you can't even get to the depth. So, I think the ocean is certainly a viable, component of much hidden knowledge of races that we don't even begin to understand.
Breakaway civilizations.
I think the mermen are real, and people will be like, "Oh, that's fucking ridiculous, Crow." I'm like, "Well,
they exist.
You've never explored even a little bit." And here's the thing I can say: people will say about all these things can't exist or they don't exist. We already know for a fact that there was treaties made that we can't cross certain areas of the Antarctic. We already know that Admiral Byrd, years and years ago, talked about his voyage to the Antarctic. In one of the original television interviews, way back when, still in black and white, he talks about the fact that he went to Antarctica, and after crossing a chunk of snow, they came to an ocean that we don't know about, that is not on our maps. They crossed that ocean and came to an area of land with alien beings there that they had contact with, that they talked with, that had every type of resource you could imagine, from petroleum to plutonium to everything in between. And they traded and bartered with them. And he said this openly on TV. That was then taken down, but people had copies of it. And they made a treaty after that you can't fly or cross over certain areas of the Antarctic, that it is off limits only to specific regions of government around the world. Well, the Antarctic's huge. Someone could say, well, yeah, that's all conspiracy, this and that. I want you to walk outside your home right now. And I want you for 3 days, 4 days straight, walk all day, every day, as far as you can. And at the end of those 4 days, I want you to see how far you've gotten in your own state. And realize that that is nothing but a fraction of your state, of your country in this planet. And to realize that you have seen but just a fraction of this world, a percentage of this world. So how can you tell us what is in this world or on this world if you've only ever seen 0.5% or 1% of it? Even if you traveled, I've traveled extensively. I've been to, dozens of states. I've been to other countries. I still, in the grand scheme of things, on every road and alley and mountain and sea, have seen jack shit. Right. So people will sit there and say, well, you believe in this and that? Yeah, absolutely, because they're still finding holes in Papua New Guinea years ago where they went down in, and there's whole civilizations of animals and forest and flora that they never even discovered before, that was just in a crater, in a hole in the jungle. If they can find out, what are we not discovering? What has been discovered that has been hidden? What has been captured and covered up? And I think that there's a lot out there, and I think that there's a lot suppressed as the topic of this episode this evening. But then I also think that there's a lot given to us to feed us, to string us along, to give us just enough. I think that there's some truth in it. Just like that New York Times article, and I'll end with this. Just like that New York Times article that blew the roof off of UFOs in 2017. 3% of it was fact. 97% of it was false. But once it hit the airwaves, it didn't matter. The world set fire to it. UFO frenzy. We want the truth. We need the truth. Tell us. And then they fed us more and more. And at that point, the lines between reality and fiction became very blurred, as they often are. And we just spoon-fed and ate everything that was given to us. So we have to think of that they give us that 3% truth. Just in this trial, they gave us the 3% truth with not much more than that. And we accept it, we, embrace it, and we move on with our lives. We never dig much further. And that's sad, because all of it's being kept from us. Daniel had mentioned, where did these beings come from? Maybe these beings were here before us. Maybe we're the ones that pushed them back into their caves, suppressed them, and says, we are the race here. We're the master race. We're the one. No, they were here before us, and we pushed them back, and we suppressed them.
Hundreds of races.
Exactly, and we tried to dominate it. We spit in the face of Hitler's philosophy of the master race, but that's what the human beings are. We dominate and destroy and kill everything around us to try to be the one. But there's a lot more around us that we just don't know of because it's kept from us.
That's right.
End of my rant.
No, feels good. I'm right there with you, brother. Feels good, man. I have no further statement, Your Honor.
Let's see. There are many, many things out there and below. That is true, Michael. Absolutely. I mean, and as we talked about the ocean, I mean, I can't even imagine, because how much... For yourself, I'm speaking of me right now, how much of the ocean have you really explored? I've swam in several oceans, but I never go out more than about 30 yards. Right. You know what I mean? I'm like, fuck that. I ain't getting eaten by a shark. I don't want to know what's swimming around me right now. I mean, that's terrifying. Go jump off of a boat and swim around, which I've snorkeled and things before, but you still only swim in that 100-yard area around the boat, and then you get back on. So even if you've done that 100 places in the world, snorkeled and scuba dived, you've stayed right in that section, which is literally a grain of sand. So you can say, oh, I've seen the world, I've explored it, I've really been versed. No, you haven't. You haven't seen more than a bucket of sand in your entire life. and that's on the entire beach. So I rest my case.
Geographically speaking, there is so much more water than there is physical land. And I believe that there are biomes of entire civilizations underwater, not to mention portal systems of more water that go deeper underground, and that there are breakaway civilizations, probably maybe 10 of breakaway civilizations on and inside planet Earth that are maybe even equal to or more than the population of humans.
Well, I agree, because rivers, even growing up in Ford City, Pennsylvania, the river system, there is areas of that river that have openings that go into underground rivers. That isn't just like a myth.
It goes forever.
Yeah, there's actually sections that you can swim down, and at the bottom of what should be the river, there's a hole, and you can swim down under land. You'd be trapped there. You'd drown. But you can swim down under it. That leads to a whole nother underground river that no one even goes down that far because they're never going to find their way back out, but that's been documented. That's all over the world. So if you have rivers under rivers, it means that above a whole, what could possibly be a civilization, there's a roof, and then there's another river, and then our world. Right. So like I said, a world within a world, and we talked about it. If you want to, folks, go back and check out our Inner Earth Civilization episode 2 seasons ago. I think it was season 2. We talk about the fact that through Admiral Byrd and through some of these other individuals that we've mentioned before, they talked about going into Inner Earth. They talked about actually meeting beings. And these are people who are 4-star, 5-star generals. So I would, you know what I mean? Maybe they're lying, but I don't see, especially back in the early 1900s, why they would have. I don't see what the point was, because that was back at a time where, unlike today, they're releasing all this information. Back then, it was very unhealthy for you and very unaccepted to say such things. So
unhealthy is
very
a good
unhealthy
term. Anybody ever hear of like the heart attack gun, things like that? Trust me,
our military submarines can travel halfway into the United States, probably under the ground. Yeah, because if you go down far enough, there's probably under our feet.
They connect,
ocean,
I think,
way down.
Probably tunnel systems that connect the countries. I've heard, absolutely, Michael. I have actually heard of military sort of submarine systems that can connect continents.
Well, there's the UMBs, the underground military bases that they talk about run for miles. And people, there's some, I follow urbex groups, urban, exploring, and somebody, crazy motherfucker, in the United States put a video and pictures up of a underground military base that's no longer manned, that he was able to get into. And he was putting up all this video and pictures of this underground military base that he said he walked miles into the earth and eventually turned back because he was creeped the fuck out, because after so far, he's like, all right, I got to turn back because I've been walking for 3 hours and I still am nowhere. And he came back out. But all of this video and footage and pictures that showed this, and it was all just empty. And that was one base of hundreds that are said to be in this country.
Hundreds of bases.
And they all connect
over, inside mountains, under the water. Dude, they're everywhere.
You have been on a show with me before, says Michael. Michael Anthony. I believe, Michael, you can tell me real quick.
I think we've both been on his show.
So
he's a really cool guy. He's local to us too, Pittsburgh guy.
Were you on our show or?
We were on his show. He's a good guy. He's a free thinker. I like him a lot.
I don't even know, man. It's been so much content over the years. People, I'm like, we've talked for hundreds. We talked for hundreds of hours about strange and unusual things.
He's got an open mind. I don't know if you were on his show, but I know I was.
That might have been
we were just talking about very similar things. He's a very open-minded, free thinker.
Correct.
Thanks for being here, Michael, man. Appreciate it.
We said 3 different things, so correct doesn't really give me the answer, but I'm going to accept it, Michael. That's all right. Real quick, before we finish out this episode, I did have a comment on our last episode that asked me to tell a story real quick. And I was going to save it for another episode, but I'm going to do it right now.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
And then we'll finish up for tonight. It's not related to tonight's topic, but we'll get it out there. Someone said, I want to hear more about your story, Crow, of the ghost city that you discovered, the ghost town. I told this on a past episode, but I said I would just do a quick highlight. So whoever the listener was that left out a week ago, and I'll try to go back and find you and let you know that it was on this episode at the end, roughly an hour and 2 minutes in. That'll be my place marker. A friend and I, when we were about 14 years old, somewhere around that ballpark, used to go exploring the woods all the time across the river in Ford City, Pennsylvania. Small town along the river. Across the river should just be woods, and then should lead into areas like Cadogan and areas similar to that, very small towns. Well, we went one day into the woods, and we were just exploring. We used to go around and, pick different mushrooms and look at them and climb trees and just do what fucking 14-year-old kids did, smoke pot and have fun. And we hiked up over this mountain, or over this hillside, rather, and we came upon what looked like a little house on the prairie village of about 12 houses, roughly 12 cottages, 12 cabins, with no cars, no visible road to it, with a very, very peculiar and strange feel to it, because normally I would be all about that shit. I would go explore every one of them. I'd be like in heaven. That's my shit. But my buddy, whenever I said to him, you want to go down there and check that out, he was scared and panicked and said, nah, man, I don't want to go anywhere near that. And then what was weird is he asked me, do you want to go down and check it out? And I said, nah, man, I'm good. For some reason, the vibe was off. Like, nope, don't want to go down there. Don't want to go anywhere near that. And I don't know why, because that is something I've thought about later on. Like, now I want to go. But when I was there, something caused that fear. Like, not a normal fear, not my fear. Something made me afraid of it. And what was interesting is there, like I said, never explored this town. It's not on the map. When I talked to people who live in that area, they told me I was crazy. It's not there. I went back afterwards on my own several times to try to find this place. Could never find it again. It vanished. I know it sounds crazy. Years later, I had a dream about it out of nowhere, which was the beginning of my spiritual awakening years later in my life. I wasn't a very spiritual person. One night I had a dream so vivid that I was exploring this town by myself, and all kinds of weird shit happened. And when I awoke that morning, I became an extreme spiritualist. I began occultism. I began studying, and I became what I am today. Now, I reached back out to that friend to ask him, do you remember that time that we went and found that ghost city that we were scared of, that we wouldn't go to, and then we couldn't find it again? He had no recollection of the town. And he was like, that wasn't me. And I'm like, yeah, bro, it was. We were there. No, man, I don't know what it was erased from his memory. I am the only person that knows of this story because he doesn't remember. I don't know what it was because I didn't explore it. I never found it again. But a listener says, I want to know more about that because that was one of the most fascinating things I ever heard. I wish I could tell you more, brother. I don't know. Out of all the things I've experienced, as I'm a paranormalist, I go out all around the country and explore and investigate places, either by myself or with a team. I've experienced amazing poltergeist activity and hauntings and possessions and all of that. I have seen a UFO one time in my life, only once, which I'm thankful for because I never expected to actually encounter that. So I've seen a lot of very crazy things. That specific encounter was one of the weirdest that I've ever encountered because I've never heard of anything like that. I've never heard outside of Hollywood movies of someone actually encountering a whole town that is abandoned that looked like it was from hundreds of years earlier and then just vanishing. So I did want to throw that out there because I didn't want to take up one of our call-in episodes with that story again, but I did want to present that to the individual. I'll make sure I comment. I think it was on YouTube, but I will comment on that so you can check this out at the end of the video. And other than that, I have 1,000 hours of live streaming. That's what's up, Michael. Yeah, I don't even know where we're at this point. It's a blur. And it's weird for me to think back. I'm like, yeah, I don't hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of talking. And I don't know what the fuck we've talked about. But I want to thank you guys. Daniel, by all means, feel free to close out with any statements you have.
Thank you very much, brother. I do appreciate you sharing that story. It reminds me of the Twilight Zone. You oftentimes in the past have asked me what my opinion are on these stories, and I do have a small opinion before we go. I believe that time is nonlinear. And I believe that when you're of a certain vibrational frequency in your consciousness, you can actually slip outside of linear time. And there are little pockets, little breakaway pockets that maybe you in the moment just perceived a pocket universe or another slip in moment in time. And that's why that place vanished. And your friend didn't remember it because maybe he just, not only the energy of the place doesn't technically even exist in our linear reality. So maybe for someone like him, his consciousness wasn't ready for that type of experience and kind of in a sense just buries it, blanks it out, or it's just doesn't exist in his timeline anymore.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is somehow he experienced it because I experienced it. And because he was there, it brought him onto that frequency. And he's seen it. But shortly after returning back to normal life, it vanished for him. Whereas to me, it was like I was there.
That's what I'm saying.
To him, it was just like a reel in a movie where I forgot it, just like a movie I watched a week ago. It's gone. But to me, it was something so profound that changed me. I couldn't believe when I reached back out years later, and I'm like, you remember that time? Certain that he was going to say, yeah, and we were going to have this huge conversation, like, what the fuck was that? No, he's like, dude, what are you talking about, man? And I, like, had to try to convince him that he was there, and he was adamant. He was like, that wasn't me, man. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And that was one of the most peculiar things of the whole story is I'm like, you don't remember? No, I don't remember. I wasn't there, man. That wasn't me. And I'm like,
right on.
Okay, man. I'm like, if you
there
say, I wasn't even going to push it. I'm like, all right, man. Maybe I should shut up. Maybe the Men in Black got to you and flashed you with the little flashing
I just
thing.
fucking wiped his memory. I don't know.
Wiped your memory. I'm going to shut up so they don't do it to me.
Aliens exist. The disclosure of them is controlled. It's agenda-based. Don't believe everything you see on TV, okay? A lot of smoke and mirrors. And werewolves exist. Lycanthropy exists. That's a fact. You're speaking to one right now. And I would like to thank everybody for this journey on going into the video side. I think it's fun having the video on, whereas like previous seasons were just audio, and it does add a new dynamic, a new layer to our show. So thank you everybody for being here, for watching us, for listening to us. And Frater, tell them about what we got in 2 weeks.
So in 2 weeks, we're going to talk. It's kind of out of order, but not out of order. In 2 weeks, we are going to do an episode talking about the thinning of the veil for Samhain and for Halloween. As we're getting close to that season, kind of talk about why it might be that the veil is thinner at this point, why spiritual contact is more present, why a lot more strange things happen at that point in time, and be deep diving into that. So that'll be a fun episode. Some people might say, well, why wouldn't you do that later in October? Well, we had to secure a date for our guest, and we got a guy by the name of Jamie King and his wife are going to be on the show talking about Yeti and talking about Sasquatch. These are two people who, as I go out and research the paranormal and go out to all these investigation locations and research ghosts, these two do that on the Sasquatch side of things, and they go out and spend a lot of time researching Sasquatch. And Daniel and I had met Jamie and his wife 2 years ago at HillCon at Hillview Manor in Pennsylvania at a convention, and he had a booth set up there. He was a speaker there. This is these two guys' lives. They spend their life dedicated to Sasquatch. And it should be a very fun interview that Daniel and I will get to interview the two of them, and that'll be coming on... Let's see. So the 12th will be the episode on Samhain and Halloween and the thinning of the veil. 2 weeks later on the 26th, just before Samhain and Halloween, we'll be talking about Sasquatch. So it'll be a fun episode for the next two. And we have a lot of other great guests coming up. We have a gentleman I'm not going to name right at the moment, but is a abductee. He's been abducted multiple times. This gentleman has been on multiple news stations, has been in documentaries, has been in magazines and books and articles. He has footage that he's released that no one can even begin to understand. He has one about a flying dolphin. It's pretty interesting, where in the sky there's literally a dolphin flying through the sky, and he has it on footage. He constantly is visited by aliens, and he's been on dozens and dozens of shows about this. This is something that he's experienced, so we're going to be bringing him on the show and a lot of other great guests. So make sure you stick around for all of the episodes of Celestial Oddities Pong, and if you get time, check out Knights of the Nephilim, which is my other show that alters in between these weeks. We're on a little bit of a hiatus right now, taking a couple weeks off, and we'll be back with more guests here coming up, but that's what we got in store for you. And other than that, guys, I'm just checking to make sure there wasn't any other comments here that need read off. I don't think so. As always, click the like, share, and follow button. Spread it around. Help us out. It means a lot. If you have any questions or concerns, hit us up at celestialoddities@gmail.com. celestialoddities@gmail.com with any questions, concerns, things you want to see us do differently. Any of the above. And if you have experiences that you want to tell us, you want to come onto the show video-wise or just audio-wise, or you want to write it and send it in and we read it and leave your name out, that's fine. We're going to be doing a call episode after the Bigfoot episode. So next one, Samhain. Next one, Bigfoot. next one, call in. And I'm really looking forward to that this year because we can just snatch you right on here and bring you on. And what's cool is we have people that will plan, but as people are leaving comments, if you want to jump in and we're not even expecting you, we can just slap you right in. I can just drag and drop you right into this bitch. So it'll be a good time. So, make sure you check that out. Other than that, Daniel, as always, brother, it's always a pleasure. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks, my man.
Peace.
Take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.